안녕하세요.
How do you do? You have said not to live with a kind heart, but Hongikingan is supposed to live to benefit others. I am confused about living to help others and not living with a kind heart. Could you please explain? Also, you have said that we should separate if our ideas do not agree between spouses, friends, or family. However, wouldn't separation cause pain and suffering for those people? It seems like causing pain and suffering goes against the ideals of Hongikingan ideology. Please explain.
참말로. 예. 먼저
Let's try to solve your question about living with a kind heart.
착하게 살아서
We should not live with a kind heart. This is for sure.
우리가 어른이 된
An
사람들이
adult should not be
착하게
nice.
살아야 되고, 그 대신 어떻게
How
살아야
should
되냐?
an adult live?
바르게 살아야 돼.
Live correctly.
착한 거하고
There is a
바른 거는
difference
다릅니다.
between living with a kind heart and living correctly.
착한 거는
When should you be
언제
nice?
착하게 살아야 되느냐? 어릴 때
When you are young.
제일 착하게 살아야
When a
될
child
때는
is 7 years old is when they should be living with a kind heart the most.
근데 우리가 14살이 되면
When a child reaches 14 years of age is when they need to learn about righteous living by about 30%.
해 가야 된다. 그러면 우리가
When a person reaches 21 years of age, they are adults.
어른이 됩니다. 요때는 70%
At this time, they have to live correctly by 70%.
우리는 성장을 할 때
We raise our children to have a kind heart during their growth.
그래서 조금 더 성장을 하면
After some development, the focus shifts from being nice or kind-hearted to living righteously. We need to study together what is living righteously.
요렇게 하면 우리가 성장을 하는
This is how we grow.
우리가 어른이 됐다라는
Adulthood is time to live correctly, not living with a kind heart.
때가 됐다. 바르게 안 살고 착하게
What happens if one lives with a kind heart but not correctly?
착하게 사니까 너한테 당하고 사는
He will be deceived all the time. What happens when you live with a kind heart and are deceived? You cause society to have more bad people because you need to go through suffering.
당하는 것만 문제가
The problem is not only you suffering from deception, but you created more bad people who deceive others.
이용하고 하는 사람을 많이 만들기 때문에 이는 자체가 내가
Because you are the reason for creating these bad people in society, you will shed tears from pain.
눈물 짜게 한다. 난주 괴로움이 온다.
You will suffer later on.
착하게 살면 괴로움이
If you live with a kind heart, you will face suffering.
착하게 나는 살고 싶어.
If you want to continue living nice, that is your decision.
착하게 살면
However, if you live with a kind heart, the only result is that you will cry from suffering. The reason why you will cry in pain is that because you are the culprit of making society go the wrong way.
니는 눈물 흘리면서
Such an occurrence happens so that you will realize your fault.
그 일이 지금 벌어지고 있는 거다 이 말이죠. 이 사회는 냉철하게
You are
바르게
truly
살 때
living for the benefit of society when you live correctly and rationally.
네가 착한 것 때문에
You should not be nice because you will be producing more bad people.
바르게 분별을 하고
If
살면
people live with right discernment,
나쁜 사람이
then
안
bad people will not be
나쁜
created.
사람이 나와봐야 나쁜
Why?
짓을
Because
해도 안
people
당하고
will not be fooled despite bad people trying to dupe them.
나쁜 사람은 이 세상에
If you live correctly, you will not be producing bad people, and therefore you will not face hardship.
이런 거죠. 우리는
People have taught us in the past that we should be nice.
본디 착하게 살아야 된다라고 자꾸 가르치니까 그래야 되는 줄 알고
So people lived with kind heart, but then end up crying in the end.
인자는 그런 거를
We as intellectuals need to put things in order.
지식인들은 이 사회를 바르게
Scholars
살아가면서
need to
우리가
study and
연구하고
discuss what is living
발전을
correctly
시켜서
in this
우리
society
후손들,
and form a
후대들한테
foundation
필요한
for our
힘을 찾아서
descendants.
하는 것이지. 우리가 착하게 살았는데
It is not right to
나는
blame
착하게
others for being bad and
살았다라고
thinking you did the right thing by being kind-hearted.
착해서 나쁜 사람을
You have to
생각하는
realize
거야.
those bad people exist because of your kindness.
이제 그런 것들이죠. 그래서 우리가 착하게 사는
So some of you may be confused about this.
헷갈리기도 할 겁니다.
You have been taught that being nice was the right way of living for thousands of years, and suddenly some strange man comes along and tells you that living with kindness is a sin. So you're challenging me. We have to correct this. We are making efforts to develop knowledge so that we live righteously, to make the right discernment. To give you a straight answer bluntly, you should not live with kindness. You should live with kind heart while you are growing up, but after growing and living in society as an adult, you have to live correctly. If you live correctly, you will never face hardship. That is why we have to study 정법, which is the study of correct living, the law of nature, how to treat other people. Studying the principles of treating others correctly is called character education. So it's time now to study about human nature. Do not misunderstand me. All this cannot be explained in a short period. You may understand me a little now, but if there is just a little bit of material that you understand, then you should use that information to study. People who feel that they have to help the needy but can't because I tell them not to be kind think that it's unfair and want to challenge me. If you spend too much time with the poor, you will also become poor. You should not spend too much time together with the poor. The reason why you are seeing poor people is so that you would learn what needs to be done to help them improve their lives. Not to give them bread and spend time with them. You need to understand the real reason why you see such an environment. What is the reason why poor people have to be poor? You were supposed to have studied the reason why poor people are poor, not to spend time with them in tears. Do not mix with them. If you mingle with the poor, then someone else will need to come along to study your circumstances. That is why you need to grow. If you are a prominent politician, then you should think big and try to figure out how to make these poor people escape from poverty. If you try to help a few poor people, they will never disappear from society. More poor people will be created. On the one hand, people try to help the poor, but on the other hand, more poor people are produced. Why? To make us have a realization. On the one hand, a doctor treats a sick person. On the other hand, more sick people are produced. Why? To make us have a realization. Society punishes bad people by sending them to prison. Society is not studying the reason why. That is why more people are produced to go to prison. This is the current state of our society. We need to study to fix the root cause. If you don't, things will get out of hand and society will face great difficulty. As society expanded in size, an unpleasant future environment will also come uncontrollably. We have to make an effort. Aren't we learned people? We became scholars to study and make an effort to research these things. Nature did not give you knowledge so that you can live and eat well. Nature gave you a tremendous amount of energy in the form of knowledge so that you will study the society to fix and correct what is wrong. We have to take action. Even after hearing of this message, you say, all I care is about how well I live. Then nature will watch you. Because nature will not leave you alone. This is God's promise and God's message. He will not let you live like that. When I was studying under God's guidance, this was the first thing that I questioned. He told me that He would never let those people alone like that.
믿으라고 소리는 안
He didn't tell me to believe him.
하지만 그렇게 나는
However, that is what I heard.
그게 무엇인지를
I
나는
realized what he meant at the end of my training.
그것이 절대 하나님이다.
God is absolute.
이 사회
He never allows the world to function unfairly.
그게 하늘 공사.
This project is called Heavenly Reconstruction.
시작되는 게
This is starting now in Hucheon Sidae or the New Era. Suncheon Sidae or the previous era created many contradictions, but Hucheon Sidae is the era of correcting the flaws. This is how we will improve. Does this make sense?
또 뒤에 한 가지 뭐라고 또 잊어먹었어.
There was another question I forgot. When friends or husbands and people around you have a different ideology,
그걸 또 내한테
I said to separate, so you are challenging me about that. Alright, let's solve this problem.
앞뒤 잘라
If you leave the beginning and the end out and just say that I said to separate, then I become someone who said just separate. However, there is material before and after that was left out.
뜻이 맞지 않거든 헤어지는 게.
If your ideas do not agree, then it is right to separate.
우리는 만날 때는
When people meet, they meet to help each other. If they can't help each other, then they make their partner's lives harder to live.
이럴 때는
In this situation, it is right to separate.
왜
Why?
내잘
Do not separate so that you can live better.
너희들이
If your ideas do not agree, then the person in front of you will face hardship.
그 사람이 힘들어.
Not only will the person in front of you face difficulty, but you will also face hardship.
하느님은 너희들을
God does not want you to live in hardship.
너희들이 뜻이 안
If
맞거든.
both your ideas cannot agree, then separate.
헤어지는데도
When you
이유가
separate,
있어야 되고 왜
You must have a reason.
이런 걸 찾아라.
You need to search for the reason. Do not separate just because you hate the other person. Didn't you both meet in the beginning because you liked each other? When separating, you should separate for the sake of the other person. That is also the way to solve your life problems as well. If you separate to benefit only yourself, then surely you will face a bigger problem trying to avoid a smaller problem. You will find a harder life ahead of you. If you think that you will do better by separating out of greed without thinking of your partner, then you will certainly face a harder life. Why? Because you need to realize, when you separate from a partner, you should feel apologetic because you haven't been able to help them.
이거는 내가 너무 힘들어서 헤어지는 거니까 당신이라도 잘 될 수 있도록.
You are separating because it is too difficult to continue living together and so you wish your partner a better life. You feel sorry because you couldn't help them and therefore separate. If you don't want to separate completely, then at least live separately for a while. If you are separated, then at least you can't meddle in others' affairs and not get angry at each other.
떨어져 있으면 서로가 간섭을 하고 서로가 썩내는 일은 서로한테 하지 않을 거 아니냐. 이렇게라도
Try this for 3 years.
떨어져가 있다.
If you separate, then you will have the time to think back about the good times together, not only bad memories.
다시 하면 우리가 잘 됐을 때를 상기할 수 있는 시간이 된다. 무조건 붙어 있다고
Just because you are
믿으면
together
그게
does
아니다,
not mean that you are helpful to each other.
상대를 도움되는 행위를
Realize that if you are not helpful to the other person, then you will suffer the consequences of not fulfilling your duty.
우리를 만났다라는
When
것은
people meet to be helpful to each other.
도움이 되지 않으면서도
If you stay together despite not being helpful to each other, then you are obstructing each other's lives and making it hard for both.
그런 거 다시 고려하고
So
생각하고
think about it
그래서
and try to start a new life.
이런 것들이죠. 요걸 갖다
To explain this in entirety, then I have to take many different cases and explain everything in detail.
내가 지금 이걸 풀어주는 건
I am solving your problem from a grand perspective, but after listening to my explanation, you may have a more detailed question that arises from it.
풀어주면 그걸 붙들고 또
You ask a more detailed question and I answer. You listen and think of a more detailed question from that answer, and so on and so forth. As I continue to answer and solve your questions, I will have solved many things so that in the end, I have completely solved one subject. Do not be so greedy to receive all the answers at once. Since you ask me a question, I answer. You form another question from that answer. If I don't answer your question like this, then you wouldn't know how to ask a question in the first place. So let's solve questions one by one so that I will explain all the questions in the world for our Jungpa family to study. I will answer all your questions about the world, the universe, and the fundamental questions about the human being. Let us study and go forth step by step.
공부해가면서 우리 성장합시다. 예.